The Battle of Adwa, imagine it, is the year 1896. Almost all of Africa is being conquered by European empires. Britain controls vast territories. France is expanding across the continent. Germany, Portugal, and Belgium are claiming land wherever they can. Many people believe that no African nation can resist the military power of Europe. Then something extraordinary happens. In the mountains of northern Ethiopia, an African army defeats a modern European invasion force. The victory shocks the world. Newspapers across Europe cannot believe it. For millions of Africans and people of African descent around the world, it becomes a symbol of hope. This is the incredible story of the Battle of Adwa, the battle that changed African history forever. Part 1. The Scramble for Africa. The late 19th century was a dangerous time for Africa. European countries were competing for territory, resources, and power. Historians call this period the Scramble for Africa. Within a few decades, nearly the entire continent had fallen under European control. Only two countries remained largely independent: Ethiopia, Liberia. At the same time, Italy was trying to establish itself as a colonial power. Unlike Britain and France, Italy had joined the colonial race late and wanted overseas territories to increase its prestige. Italian leaders looked toward the Horn of Africa. They established control over Eritrea and began planning further expansion. Their next target was Ethiopia. However, Ethiopia was not an easy target. It had a long history, strong traditions, and leaders determined to protect its independence. Part 2. Menelik rises to power. The ruler of Ethiopia at this crucial moment was Emperor Menelik II. Menelik was not only a warrior, he was also a skilled diplomat and strategist. He understood that European powers possessed modern weapons. Instead of ignoring this reality, he prepared for it. Over many years, Menelik purchased rifles, artillery, and ammunition from different countries. He modernized parts of the Ethiopian military and strengthened relationships with foreign governments. Most importantly, he worked to unite different regions and leaders within Ethiopia. It would be vulnerable to foreign conquest. If it stood together, it could survive. That unity would soon be tested. Part 3. The Treaty of Wuchale. In 1889, Ethiopia and Italy signed an agreement known as the Treaty of Wuchale. At first, the treaty appeared to be a simple agreement of friendship and cooperation between the two countries. Italy had recently established control over Eritrea and wanted peaceful relations with Ethiopia. Menelik II, who had just become emperor, was also interested in maintaining stability while strengthening his country. But hidden inside the treaty was a dangerous problem. The treaty was written in both Amharic and Italian. Normally, both versions should have meant exactly the same thing. However, Article 17 contained a critical difference. The Amharic version stated that Ethiopia could choose to use Italy in dealing with foreign governments if it wished. The Italian version stated that Ethiopia must conduct all foreign relations through Italy. This single difference completely changed the meaning of the treaty. According to the Italian interpretation, Ethiopia had become an Italian protectorate. Italy quickly informed European governments that Ethiopia was now under Italian influence. When Menelik II discovered this claim, he was furious. He rejected the Italian interpretation and declared that Ethiopia was an independent nation that would never accept foreign control. Diplomatic negotiations continued for several years, but neither side was willing to back down. Eventually, Menelik canceled the treaty. Italy responded by preparing for war. The path to Adwa had begun. Part 4. Ethiopia mobilizes for war. As tensions between Ethiopia and Italy continued to rise, Emperor Menelik II realized that the future of his country was at stake. He understood that Italy was not just seeking influence, it wanted control. If Ethiopia failed to resist, it could suffer the same fate as many other African nations that had fallen under European rule. So Menelik took action. He sent a nationwide call to arms, urging Ethiopians from every corner of the empire to unite in defense of their homeland. The response was extraordinary. Warriors traveled for weeks across mountains, valleys, and plains to join the emperor's army. Regional leaders brought thousands of soldiers under their command. People from different languages, cultures, and regions came together with a common purpose: protecting Ethiopia's independence. A key figure in this effort was Empress Taytu. She was more than just the wife of the emperor. She was a respected political leader who strongly opposed Italian expansion. Taytu encouraged resistance and helped organize supplies for the army. Women across the country also played a vital role. They prepared food, transported water, cared for the wounded, and supported the troops in countless ways. As the weeks passed, Ethiopia's army continued to grow. Historians estimate that more than 100,000 fighters gathered under Menelik's banner. Many carried modern rifles imported from Europe and Russia. Others carried traditional weapons such as spears and swords. But what united them all was a determination to remain free. Unlike the Italian soldiers, who were fighting for colonial expansion, the Ethiopians were fighting for their homes, families, and country. By early 1896, the stage was set. Two armies were preparing for a confrontation that would make history. Part 5. The Road to Adwa. The Italian army was led by General Baratieri. At first, he believed that his modern, European-trained force would be able to defeat the Ethiopians. But reality was proving much more difficult. The Ethiopian army was larger than expected. Italian supply lines were stretched thin. Food was becoming scarce. Morale among the troops was beginning to decline. At the same time, politicians in Italy were demanding results. They wanted a quick victory that would strengthen Italy's reputation as a colonial power. Baratieri knew that waiting too long could weaken his position. Under pressure from Rome, he made a decision that would change history. He would attack. His plan was to launch a surprise offensive against the Ethiopian forces near the town of Adwa. The operation required precise coordination between several Italian brigades moving through rugged mountain terrain during the night. If everything went according to plan, the Italians could gain a strategic advantage. But things did not go according to plan. Maps were inaccurate. Communication broke down. Units became separated in the darkness. By dawn, the Italian army was scattered across the mountains. The battle was about to begin and Ethiopia was ready. Part 6. The Battle of Adwa. Before sunrise on March 1, 1896, Italian troops began moving through the rugged mountains near Adwa. The attack was supposed to be carefully coordinated. Instead, confusion spread throughout the army. The difficult terrain made navigation extremely challenging. Some units moved too far ahead. Others drifted away from their assigned positions. Several brigades became separated and unable to support one another. What was intended to be a unified attack quickly turned into a series of isolated encounters. Ethiopian scouts noticed the Italian movements and reported them to Menelik and his commanders. The Ethiopian leadership immediately recognized the opportunity. Rather than waiting for the Italians to organize themselves, they launched powerful attacks against the separated units. Thousands of Ethiopian fighters charged across the hills and valleys. The fighting was intense. Rifle fire echoed through the mountains. Artillery thundered across the battlefield. For hours, both sides fought fiercely. But as the day progressed, the Italians found themselves overwhelmed. The Ethiopian army had superior numbers and controlled much of the surrounding terrain. One Italian position after another began to collapse. By midday, many Italian soldiers were retreating. Others were surrounded and captured. The invasion force was falling apart. By the end of the battle, Italy had suffered a devastating defeat. Thousands of Italian soldiers had been killed, wounded, or taken prisoner. The Ethiopian army had achieved one of the greatest victories in African history. Part 7. WHY Ethiopia won. The victory at Adwa was not an accident. Several important factors contributed to Ethiopia's success. First, Menelik managed to unite many regions and leaders behind a common cause. At a time when unity was essential, Ethiopians came together to defend their independence. Second, Ethiopia had spent years acquiring modern weapons. Many Ethiopian soldiers were equipped with rifles that could compete with those used by European armies. Third, the Italian command made serious mistakes. The decision to attack through unfamiliar mountainous terrain during the night created confusion and separated their forces. Fourth, Ethiopian fighters were highly motivated. They were not fighting to gain territory. They were fighting to protect their homeland, families, and future. Finally, Ethiopian commanders understood the local terrain and used that knowledge effectively during the battle. Together, these factors turned what Italy expected to be a victory into a historic defeat. Part 8. The Legacy of Adwa. The impact of the Battle of Adwa was felt around the world. At a time when much of Africa was under colonial rule, Ethiopia had successfully defended its independence against a European power. News of the victory spread rapidly across Africa, Europe, the Caribbean, and the Americas. For many people, Adwa became proof that colonial conquest was not inevitable. The battle inspired future generations of anti-colonial leaders and freedom movements. It showed that unity, preparation, and determination could overcome even the most powerful opponents. Following the defeat, Italy was forced to recognize Ethiopia's independence. The victory also strengthened Ethiopia's position on the international stage. Today, Adwa remains one of the most celebrated events in Ethiopian history. Every year, Ethiopians remember the courage, sacrifice, and leadership that made the victory possible. More than a century later, the Battle of Adwa continues to symbolize resistance, sovereignty, and national pride. It was more than a military victory. It was a moment that changed the course of African history. Outro. The Battle of Adwa was one of the most important victories ever achieved by an African nation. Against the expectations of the world, Ethiopia defended its freedom and preserved its independence. The question is, what do you think was the biggest reason for Ethiopia's victory at Adwa? Was it Menelik's leadership, the unity of the Ethiopian people, or Italy's mistakes? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more fascinating history from Ethiopia and across Africa. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.